Well, good morning. I'd like to welcome you to our Sabbath school this morning. Those who are online, we have a little different Sabbath school this morning than usual. We are going to be reporting on the mission trip that a group of us just came back from India. And we had more of our group that was going to be here, but they got sick. So we were planned on 13 of us being here, but that number has dropped. But anyway, I would like to invite those who were on our mission trip to come forward and take a seat so you can see how nicely they are dressed. And while they're coming up, I'm just going to give a little brief rundown on a couple things that happened. It was obvious that the devil didn't want our team to go. We had made all of our plans. We pretty much had, and just go ahead and sit down if you want. We made our plans, and we thought we had covered everything. And it started out that first we had a physician's assistant that was going to join our team. So Pablo was going to have some help with the medical. India denied her visa. So right off the bat, we lost medical. We also had Victor, who is not here. He was going to be here with his family, who had applied for his passport in time. It was going to be close, but still, from what they said, he should have got his passport. Well, up to the point where he met us at the airport, no passport. And that was one of our speakers for one of our sites. So then we go through trying to get our tickets. We go to the ticket counter. And about half of our group got their tickets, no problem, and we were getting ready to go to the gate. But they stopped the other half of our group and said, "Where's your COVID tests? Or your, vaccination card." And we said, "We don't have it. We don't need it." And I had printed off what India's Ministry of Health had requirements were, and I had a copy of it, and I showed, right here it says, we don't have to have it. Pablo had on his phone a copy of what Qatar Airlines said we had, and it said, COVID shots or tests not required. So we show him, this is what the government says, this is what your airline says, and the guy says, "I don't believe it. You've got to have this stuff." So he calls Mumbai to ask the official India, and they said, no, they have to have PCR tests to fly. So then what are we going to do? We're all there, and we can't go. We're at the airport. So we start talking and asking, and a group of us were there, and we all huddled probably about 20 feet from the counter, and we got in a big circle and we prayed. And then we go back and we keep working with this one guy, and I'm up at the counter and I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, "Man, what can we do? We got to do." And the guy says to me, the guy at the counter says, "I'm a believer. You guys prayed. What are you worried about?" What an amazing thing. But he still said, "I'm not letting you go until somebody else higher than me says so." So they're texting back and forth with India, and India says they have to have PCR tests. So we're looking, we're just, okay, where can we get a PCR test? And so they said, well, the closest place is CVR. And so we tried to call them, and they said, you got to make your appointments online. We won't make you an appointment over the phone. We won't tell you if you'll even see you once you get here. And then we looked, and it was like 5:30, I think. Everything's closed. We cannot get a PCR test. Our flight leaves in an hour and like 20 minutes. And we're still standing at the counter. So he says, "I'll text somebody else." And so they're texting back and forth. I said, "Well, can you ask them if they would allow us to get a PCR test in India? And if we have to quarantine, we'll quarantine." He said, "Okay, I'll ask the question." So he texts somebody. And I don't know, probably about an hour before the flight's supposed to leave, because he says, I won't do anything unless I have it in writing. He gets a text from him saying, yes, we will do that. So we got our stuff, we got our tickets, so we make it to the first phase of our flight. Just as they're loading the plane when we get there. And so we just get right in lines and get on the plane. Well, then we get to Qatar. And as it would be, where our plane landed and where we got to be to connect is on the opposite ends of the airport. And Qatar is a big airport. So we are hurrying to get to our flight because there was less than 2 hours between landing and takeoff, and so they want you to start loading, like an hour before. So we're hurrying, and our group is stretching quite a big distance between us. Well, Dean was getting slow. He was saying he was getting tired, and so we stopped. And then, as you know from our prayers, and I'm going to let Dean and Vicki talk about that in a minute, Dean collapses just as we're getting ready to board one of those little golf carts to take us to our flight. And they have to call the paramedics. And so we are trying to figure out what we're going to do because there's a few of us there and there's a few of us over here. And we're praying and we're trying to decide what happens. Well, it got to the point where they come back and tell us, if you don't leave right now, you're going to get left. So Dawn says, I'm going to stay with Vicki and Dean and Zach. The rest of you go, we'll catch a later flight and join you. So I said, okay. So we took off. They're literally holding the flight for the three of us who were still there. And our flight, I don't remember how long it was delayed, but because it was waiting for us to get on. And at this point, I'm going to stop. But I just want you to see that the devil did not want us there, and he did everything he could to mess it up. Because when Dawn and Vicki and Dean and Zach didn't make it, that took, again, another one of our speakers. It took one of our nurses. And it took over a third of the money, the cash that we were carrying, because we didn't think about it, to pay for things once we got to India. Oh, yeah. And Vicki was our VBS leader. So we, by the time we land in India, we've lost 40% of our speakers, our VBS leader, and about 40% of our cash, our money that we needed in order to pay for things once we got to India. God's a mighty God. He saw our problems before they started, and he already had solutions. Now, I want to give, they've got Dean and Vicki a chance to tell us a little bit about their experience in Qatar.
Like Bruce said, we landed at gate 1, and gate 30 was 10 miles away to me what it was. And so I started walking down, even got on the electronic sidewalk, but that didn't help too much. And I told Vicki I need to stop, and so we got off the sidewalk and sat down for a few minutes, and then I got back on, went on down some more gates, and I had to stop again. And we did, and so I rested a little bit, and so went on further down, and I told Vicki I can't go anymore. So I sat down, and someone held one of the golf carts, and I started walking over there towards it, and I just collapsed. And I was wearing my backpack, and that kept my head from hitting the floor. And so I guess the guy on the golf cart called the paramedics. Seemed like they was there in just a little bit of time. And they was riding up their bicycles. They had a EKG machine on their bicycle. So they hooked me up to that. And Vicki said my thing was just going all over the chart. And the paramedic asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I'd like to get back on the plane. And he said, no. Vicki said no, I think. And so they talked me going to see the doctor there in the airplane terminal. And so they put me on a gurney and got down to the clinic. I guess they stabilized me there and started giving me oxygen. And then after a couple hours there, they took me to the hospital, and I was in ICU for 3 days, I think. And then they carried me up to a step-down unit, and I was there a couple of days. And then finally they took me up to just a regular floor. And I was always wondering how God was going to work things out. And so we was up there on the 6th floor, and some guy walked in and said, "Hello, Vicki."
I got one. I think better on my feet. He did say, "Hello, Vicki." And I said, "Hello." He says, "Is Dean here?" I said, "Yes, right over here." He said, "Well, I'm Pastor Nadado." And that really surprised me. And I was, when he said that, I knew he had to be the Seventh-day Adventist pastor from our church. And sure enough, there is only one church in Qatar. And Qatar is a very, very small country. The Christians, none of them have churches over there. They only have a mosque on about every corner. And they pray 5 times a day. But the Christians aren't allowed to have a church, and they meet in what they call a Christian complex. And we were mighty glad to see Pastor Nadado from that congregation. And he said, "Would you like to come to church Sabbath?" And we said, "Sure." So he says, "Don't worry about a thing. Now, when you get well enough, the hospital will release you, and you'll have to go somewhere because they have a rule over there. When you have an incident like he did, they don't let you fly for 14 days. We were hoping we'd catch up with the group and get to come home with them, but we had to wait another whole day. They wouldn't let us come. So we followed them up on the 8th. Anyway, Pastor Nadado said, "We've got you covered. I'll find someone in the congregation that you can stay with." So he also brought his head elder to meet us. And the head elder was responsible for picking us up when we got released and taking us to the home of the Birkenstocks, where we stayed for the next 4 days. And Ramel is the name of the head elder. He called and he said, "Vicki, would you be glad to give your testimony in church for us Sabbath?" And I said, "Well, sure." It was just a small church. Pastor Nadado had told me they had 3 or 4 families. Well, I got there 2 weeks ago, today I believe it was, and there was 500 people there. So I stood and gave my testimony to those 500 people. They said they only have about 300 members over there, and they don't know who the other 200 are. People that just come. They cannot evangelize people over there. The way you do missionary work is you have to invite them to tea to your house, and you do that several times, and then finally you invite them to eat supper, and then if they ask you questions, you can answer their questions. And that's about the only thing you can do, because you can't evangelize in any way. And everybody worships at this Christian complex. And the Adventists actually rent their space from the Anglicans. So it's not exactly the same kind of climate as we have over here. But there's one thing that I want to stress through this whole thing. God was with us. I knew when Dean collapsed at the airport, at first I claimed a promise. I claimed Joshua 1:9, which says, "Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest." Boy, I claimed that promise. And I also claimed the one, it's Philippians 4:19 that says, "And my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in Christ Jesus." God did supply all our needs. He gave us everything we needed and more besides. We had a roof over our house, our head. He had the medical help he needed. Nowhere could we have been. Even if we had been at home, I do not believe that we could have got him to the hospital quick enough, because by the time he got to the hospital, he already had a blood clot in his lungs. And he was in ICU for 2 days. And then he went to a step-down unit and so on. We spent about 10 days in the hospital. That was our mission trip. But I'd done a lot of studying before I left on this trip, and there's a quote that I found that really gave me courage. It says, "The unstudied, unconscious influence of a holy life is the most convincing sermon that can be given in favor of Christianity." And that's what we tried to live while we were in Qatar. The people were wonderful, gracious, and very courteous. They gave us everything we needed. And now you might be thinking we'd owe a great big huge hospital bill, but one of God's blessings to us was in Qatar, nobody pays medical expenses. Qatar is a very rich country with all the gas wells in the Persian Gulf. And we owe no bill, and that is a blessing. There are several things that I want to leave you with that I learned. The people were wonderful. God keeps his promises. We can get by with a whole lot less than we think we can. I think Dawn probably experienced the same thing I did. We had to wear the same clothes that we got on the plane with in Atlanta for a solid week because the airport would not let me have my suitcase, and I left my carry-on with Zach. I also learned how to wash clothes in the shower. God's blessings truly are many, and it's impossible to count them all. And the people were wonderful. They had our back. The people we stayed with were wonderful. We were in good hands. She was a nurse, and he was a critical care paramedic. So just lovely people. And I would want to bring greetings from their church over there to our church today. They were wonderful people.
Marla, you got the mic. What do you want to share with us?
What part? There's so much.
What was your favorite? What did you enjoy the most?
I think the most, the people. They were so welcoming, so loving, and they just wanted to do everything for you, just wanted to make you feel really welcome, and so humble. And so the children also were just so precious when we did the VBS. Their attention to the Bible stories, their attention when they were having to color just a simple coloring page. Just lovely, lovely people.
Did you have many kids at VBS?
Oh, yes. I think the most we had was 80. 80 in one night. And they were just all so precious sitting down there together, listening on the floor to the stories.
Bob?
Well, we had, like you were saying, we had a few setbacks. So when we got there, we had to rearrange and trust in the Lord and to provide what we needed, from speakers to leaders of BBS to providers for medicine, or from the money to buy the medicines that we needed for the clinics that we were going to be doing every day. So Bruce went around asking who is willing to preach. We need 2 speakers now. And I was already set out to speak, and Eddie, who's not here with us, was going to speak too. And then we met some other people from America that were there and joined us in the group, and 2 of them stepped up. Then we have an interesting group of speakers, and that was the young guys, David and Aiden, another Aiden Pius, and another young man from Chattanooga. His name is Cameron. They both made a team, and they took over a church. So they were the speakers in one of the churches. So, David, why don't you tell us how that went? These guys took over. Well, I'll let you talk, and then I'll fill in the spaces.
It went good.
What?
It went good.
It went good.
It was like different because I've never like spoken, like preached. And then it's like you have to be an example because like people don't exactly know, like they expect more from you, I guess, or whatever. So I was like pretty nervous like the first day. And then after I preached, I was like, oh, it's not that bad. And then like because the translator, I would say like a couple words and he'd like go on and on and on and on. So I was just guessing he was changing whatever I said to make it better. So that helped a lot. And the people, there was like a lot of kids, so I wasn't that nervous with the kids. And it was actually pretty fun preaching there.
Are you glad you spoke?
Very glad.
So they had a little thing going on because we were getting the scripts for the sermons, right? We just had to read from them, maybe adjust it to our own ways. So they will read from it, and then Pastor Saunders was their translator. Wonderful, wonderful person. And then they had to also project the slides with the Bible text, which were in their language, in Tamil. And so the speaker in their team, David, when he was speaking, he will preach, and then Aiden will take over the control, the clicker for the slideshow. So one will be speaking, and the other one will be running the slideshow, and then they will swap the next day among all 3 of them. And they were richly blessed, actually, I believe. And well, Bruce, you were there. Tell us about how it went in their church.
I never got to get to their church to watch him speak. Oh, okay. There was 5 sites, and we had one site where 1 or 2 girls were at, and I always felt like, I usually went to Eddie's because I felt like there should be a man going to their church because it was at night, we'd come back. So I went most of the time to that one. I only made it 2 of the churches I never got to attend. Unfortunately, I wanted to very badly go see the boys, but didn't get to.
One of the twins also got to do because some of the churches will have health talks before the main part. And I believe one of you guys did a health talks. Who was that? Aiden?
So I did a health talk about diarrhea, and yeah. And I was rich to the best, and the people were very excited about that.
Well, tell us about the medical while you got the microphone.
So for the medical part was challenging, to put it mildly, because there was only one provider. I was the only physician, and we had lost the other person who was going to be seeing patients with us. So we tried to streamline it as much as we could, and we had planned how to make it efficient, and we had little rooms or spaces in the church or in the school where we would be. But we had several people doing vital signs, and then we'll have somebody doing triage or asking the person what they're here for. So by the time I got to them, I had a little piece of paper with all this information to save me time. And of course, none of us could speak the language, so we have a translator on each station. And the first day, it was done in an Adventist school, self-supporting school, actually. And we set the 4 or 5 different rooms in the classrooms, which are just separated by little temporary walls. that you can move around. So they will move through that, and there were only like maybe 15, 20 people when we started, and I said, oh, we got this, it's not going to be bad. Well, it was one of the longest 5 hours of the trip. We ended up seeing a little over 100 patients that day. At some point, I will be talking to a patient, and there will be 5 people around me waiting to sit down on the chair when that person started. Everybody wanted to go next, so that was a little challenging. So we were learning as we went how to control that and make it more organized. But the people helping us, they were very gracious, and the translator we had a girl that was translating for me. She's going to nursing school. Her name is Asenia. Beautiful human being, so kind, so patient, so respectful and efficient at the same time. And I said, you are like my nurse back in America. I'm taking you back home with me. My nurse here, her name is Angie, so I will call her my Indian Angie. And at some point, we had to do a meeting that night and say, how are we going to control better the people, and how are we going to get this to work more efficiently? So the next few days, we said, well, we're just going to be able to see 50 patients per session, which is still quite a bit. And every day, we will move to a different location. We will go to every location where we're also speaking, so we will go to every one of those churches. And every day was the same thing. It was a little small village, and I'd be like, oh, there's no people here. We're going to be done in 1 hour. And I don't know where they came from. But then we would start, and when we started, it was just nonstop. And I would just, from time to time, just get up just to take a little break and go outside. And it's like, there's still a lot of people in here. But everybody would do their own stations. Millie, what did you do?
So... from the beginning, I told my dad, I was like, if you see anything very interesting or different, call me because I really want to see it. So then he assigned me to the triage station with some other, Cameron, who was also doing his own station with that. And so I had my own translator. He was actually, I found out later on, he was a nursing student, but he was in his last year. He was about to finish. So he was way ahead of me. And so I would just have a patient come, ask them a couple questions. And the first day, I would ask most of the questions, and then the translator would, like, after I ask a question, he'd ask, and then he'd go back. But by the end of the time, I mean, the patient would sit down, and I would say hi to the patient, and then my translator would take over from there and be talking to the person for like 5 minutes, and I wouldn't even say anything, and then he'd be like, so this is what's wrong with them, this is how long, this is what they work, this is, and I was like, okay, I don't even need to be here. And it was really fun. The people were very grateful, and it was a really good experience doing that.
Tell us about the meals, the food.
So I've never really eaten Indian food. And so I was kind of nervous going into it because I was like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know. I wasn't sure. But the first day that we got there, I think it was in really early in the morning. And so we just decided to just go on through the day and not sleep so we'd be able to adjust better. And so as soon as we got there, I think we had like an hour until breakfast. They had made breakfast for us already. And so we all went over there, and they had like a whole table with like multiple dishes all covered, and we're all just standing there with our plates like, who knows what we should expect. But they served us, and it actually ended up being really good. They have this thing called coconut chutney. Was it? Yeah. And it's kind of like a little bit more runny than hummus. And it's made out of coconut, but it kind of has like a garlicky flavor. And it was actually really good. We ate it with these like floured kind of tortillas. They're not tortillas, but I can compare it to that. And it ended up being a lot better than I was expecting, and it was good.
Okay. You want to say? What was it like to drive or ride in India?
Well, one time I rode in a motorcycle. It was 4 of us, and it was like
On the same motorcycle?
Yeah, and it was like a 2-kilometer ride, and we had to go over this train track that they hand cranked for the things to go up, and it took about 10 minutes to get there. It was fun.
What else did you notice about driving in India? What's their driving rules like?
They drive on the opposite side of the road, so it's different, and the steering wheel's on the opposite side too. And like when you're at a railroad, instead of sticking to your lane, they all like crowd the whole thing. So when the things go up, everyone charges at each other at the same time. So it's like everyone's like moving around each other and trying to get through, and it's really like different.
What's the most important piece of equipment on a vehicle in India?
The horn.
The horn.
Yeah.
So, who hasn't? Joni. What was your favorite thing about the trip?
The first Sabbath that we were there, they took us out to have branch Sabbath school at 3 different villages. And it was just so cool because when we were there, we were on their turf, in their little villages and in their space. And we walked through the villages, and there were a few people in the village, and they would say hi to you, and a few children here and there. And then they had a tarp that they brought out for the kids to sit on, and it was just like a miracle. As soon as that tarp was down, there was about, 60 kids sitting on that tarp, ready for Vacation Bible School or Branch Sabbath School. The ladies that were there, that were translating for us, Maria and Cecilia, they had been going out to these villages and gathering the children and telling stories and singing songs. So first they sang a song to us, and then we interacted with them some. We gave them the color sheets so that they could color, and had a little gift that we could give them when they were done. Bruce was the storyteller on this trip, and he told the story of Naaman. And he gathered some of the kids to be the soldiers of Naaman. And they got on their horses and they rode away. And then they rode back and then they rode again. So after a couple of days, one of the pastors who had been out in the villages told us that the little kids were riding their horses everywhere in the village. So it's an amazing what an influence you can be. It was just so cool. The kids were so loving and just they wanted to. I'm guessing in these villages they see very few people with blonde hair and white skin, and they wanted to hug you and touch you and talk to you and take a selfie. Everybody wanted to take a selfie with you. One of our Vacation Bible schools, they told us maybe we would have 25 to 50 kids at our Vacation Bible schools. And so we kind of prepared the best we could. And we would end up with maybe 70 or 80 kids at the site. And we wanted to give them a little something to take with them when they left. So we made some little bags with pencils and toothbrushes and a little snack. And one night we were handing out the snacks or the little goodie bags. And we thought, we maybe pretty well, we're pretty close. Well, we ended up with a few more hands coming, where's my treat? So we started looking in the bottom of our Vacation Bible School bag, and we found a ball, so we gave one a ball. Oh, no, there's another ball, gave them a ball. My flashlight was in the bottom of the bag, so there goes my flashlight. But just anything to make sure that when they left, they felt loved, and it was a really good experience for us, and I think for them as well.
Tell us about the teachers at the school where we were.
There were 2 different schools. There was a primary school and a secondary school. And they had a staff of teachers, and some of them actually were Christians and some of them were Hindu. We didn't know that when we first were there, but they all were loving and kind to the kids, and you wouldn't have known a Christian from a Hindu, to be honest. They had been with the school and involved in the school, and they are picking up the ways of a Christian as well as they teach the kids and interact with the faculty. The faculty at the school are just amazing. I cannot say their names because their names have about 20 letters in them, and they would tell you your name, their name, and expect you to say it back to them. And I tried, but you would just say short name, and they would give you a little short name that you could call them. But the man who started the schools was a pastor at one time, and he quit being a pastor because he felt like the best way to reach the people in India is to reach the children. He started both of these schools and got teachers for them, and he just absolutely loves these kids. When he interacts with them, you can just see pure love. But I can't tell you what his name was. We called him Pastor Didi, and his wife is the one who cooked for us the whole time that we were there, and they took a classroom and set it up as a kitchen and sat on the floor and made food for us so that we would have something to eat the whole time that we were there. It was just amazing. So we called her Mrs. Miracle. So it was Pastor Didi and Mrs. Miracle that were the main ones that we interacted with when we were first there. Just amazing people.
What about the Muslim teachers?
Oh, that's right. One of our people that couldn't be here today, she lives in Chicago. She talked to one of the teachers that came to the school. She saw her coming in a Muslim garb, and so she asked her if she was Muslim, and she said yes, she was. They have a uniform that the teachers wear. They all have matching saris, so you can tell who the staff are. And she asked her if she believed in Christianity, and she said yes, she did believe in Christianity, even though she came dressed as a Muslim. But if she were to live her beliefs, Daphne asked her what would happen if she would be a Christian, and she said her family would kill her. So at the end of the day, she would change out of her school uniform back into her Muslim garb, and then she would go home. So it's a huge influence, and it's sometimes God will help her know what she needs to do, but it's also a scary thing to think that if you do what your heart is telling you to do, that your own family would kill you.
Would somebody want to talk to the thing about what did this mission trip mean to you spiritually? How did that affect your spiritual life?
Sometimes we think, man, we're going to go help these people because they need the Lord. But when you're there, and you're just like, to me personally, it's like, I need the Lord every day. I think a little bit more than these people because their hearts are a little bit more humble. They're a little bit more loving, more welcoming, more just kind. And I said, I need more of that to show to others,
What about when you would be done speaking each night? How did the people respond to you, Pablo?
That was a very humbling experience too. At the end of the service every night, people will come up to the stage, wait for you to get down from the stage actually, and they will make a line. They wanted you to pray for them. And they wanted you to put your hands on their head, and they will tell you what their need is, and then you will pray for them. And you will kneel down. And I feel, at first I was very uncomfortable with them kneeling in front of me, so I would kneel down with them. And my translator said, no, you don't have to kneel down, just stand here, or just have them stand along with me. But they all wanted me to put my hand on their heads and pray for their special needs. There was this lady that would come every night for me to pray for her daughter who was getting old and wasn't married yet. But there was this person that might be marrying her, and on the second or third night of praying for her, she was happy but still concerned because I guess I didn't get this in the first 2 days of praying with her. The boyfriend of the guy's family came and met her. And now it's in their hands to decide if they were going to allow their son to marry her daughter. And she was so concerned by this, and she would cry every night as we were praying. But it was so humbling for me because I was like, who am I to pray for this person? It was just very special.
I know for me, because when I would get to go to them too, they would ask me to pray for them. And I felt the same. Who am I to pray for these people? You know, my prayers aren't any more important, or I don't have any more power with God than what they do. And yet, they expected it. And the thing that probably made the biggest impression on me about it was in the morning when I was studying my devotions before, I was reading in Matthew, and I'd read the account where Jesus says, I have given you power over the evil spirits. I've given you power to heal the sick and to raise the dead. And I read where he said, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you will be able to do all these things. Well, at one of the sites where Eddie was preaching, there was a cripple, a bad cripple. He was deformed, and so he was kind of in this crouching position all the time, always happy. And I'd watch Eddie every night when I was there. She'd get down to his level and talk to him and touch him, because most of the village would just tell him to shut up and go away and leave him alone. And I saw such a love and a connection there with her, with that one young man. And I also had two experiences, once at the branch Sabbath school, and then one night, it was also at Eddie's church, I think it was, where the first time in my life I encountered somebody demon-possessed. And they said they were demon-possessed. And they wanted me to pray for them. And I did. But then the thoughts came back to my mind of what I'd read in Matthew, where it said, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, anything you say or ask in my name, I will do it for you. And I was thinking, why isn't this lame man walking? Why aren't all these sick people healed? Why isn't this demon just cast out? And it really reflected back on my own spiritual condition. Here these people are asking me to pray for them, and I have got to go back and think, okay, where's my faith? What isn't right with me and God, so that I can say as John and Peter did, take up your bed, walk, get up. Or the demons come out and leave them alone and never, or the sick people, be well. Because we're told, in great controversy in early writings, that at the end of time, that's what God's people are going to be doing. God has given us the power. He has given us the strength to do those things right now. And the only reason why we might not be doing them now is because our faith isn't what our faith should be now. So I found it a very humbling experience and a very reflective thing for myself. And I just think that mission trips are one of the most powerful things we can do to get back into perspective, put back into perspective what's truly important and where we are in this world's history. Go ahead.
Yes, going along with what you're saying, Bruce, one of the nights as I was riding back to the hotel after the meetings, I was thinking about how the meeting had gone that night, and I found it almost amusing at the time when I was speaking that I would sometimes, like David said, I would say 5 words and the translator would take 30, 40 seconds to translate what I just said. So I knew he was filling in the things that I probably didn't say that were more appropriate for their culture, or for the needs that he knows that I don't know about. And I was grateful for that. But then I was thinking, what am I doing here on the other side of the world, speaking when there's somebody else right next to me at the moment that can do a better job than me? And then when we're doing clinics, we're trying to help all these people, and I hand them 10 pills, which are going to help them for the next 5 days, for something they've been carrying for the past 10 years. So what difference am I making here? Why not just send all the money we spend on airplane tickets just to help them in another way, and let the people who are here already dedicated and doing, because you find so many dedicated people who are spreading the gospel of God over there. And it's like, what am I doing here? I'm not even a drop in a container. I'm not putting a dent on anything. What is the purpose of me being here? Why are we doing this? And it dawned on me that the call is still for us to go. God wants us to do this work. And it's a double-sided thing, I think. One of the main things is for our own good. We get to see the need. And by actively working it, we're being transformed, and we're seeing the need that we have of the Lord. All these people, we think they need the Lord, and we are learning from them. So the Lord wants us to do this because it's good for us. We are growing spiritual as we are doing His work. And then I think, well, maybe we're not making a difference with our 5 pills or the 10 minutes or the 5 minutes I'm spent talking to a person. And maybe it's about that human contact. We might be the face of Jesus to them for that short exchange. And here we were at times with our Western minds trying to be efficient, moving along the patients and doing this or that in an efficient manner. And we had to recalibrate and say, wait, we're doing this for the Lord. It's about the people. Are they seeing in us, on those brief moments, are they seeing the love of Jesus in us? Are we being His hands, His eyes, His feet, His mouth? And certainly we prayed that we were making an impact, if not with what we said, if not with what we gave them, just in the way we acted, in the way we interacted with them. And to me, that was one of the biggest things. Coming back here is, am I still doing the same here? Am I still too busy trying to accomplish what I do every day at work? Or am I trying to touch somebody else? Being an instrument of Jesus for them.
What would you guys say to somebody if they asked you, is it worth going on a mission trip? Would you do it again?
I would definitely, and I would love that to take all my family again.
Yeah, I had never been on one before, and I didn't know what to expect, but it's pretty incredible. We definitely are way more blessed than we can ever bless them.
We're out of time, but we got one more thing we need to do. And when we got to India, the first thing pretty much they did, they had a meeting, and they scarfed us, which is they presented us with a scarf, and it was a thing of thanksgiving and also appreciation. And some of our members didn't quite get to make it to India, so we would like to scarf Vicky and Dean and Zach. So Pablo, if you would do Dean, I'm going to go get one for Zach. And David, would you come with me? I want you to do Zach. We want you to know that you are officially part of the team. Just because you didn't make it to India didn't mean, yeah, right over here, David, is Zach. And I will close now with a word of prayer. Oh, they said they couldn't get it to work. Yeah, so I went back and asked. Yeah, we had pictures to show that was supposed, but somehow we didn't get everything to work right. So maybe we can show a few at some point yet. So, our kind and loving Heavenly Father, what a privilege has been ours to go and be your hands and your feet. Lord, we've gone and we have seen the need. And the gospel commission is still alive and well today. And you've called all of us to go and share the good news of salvation with somebody else. Lord, we don't have to go to India or somewhere else, but we do need to go because there's always a place and there's always a need. Lord, I thank you for the experience that you have given us, for the way you've worked miracles, that you provided for our needs, how you took care of Dean in Qatar. Lord, I thank you for your great love for us. I ask now, Lord, that you touch each one of our hearts, that you help us to realize what is truly important, and that we will move forward in faith following you, wherever it is that you might lead us. And I ask these things, and I thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.